Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful analysis that unpacks a huge paradox in Pakistan, a society that, on the surface, is deeply pious, but underneath is grappling with a powerful, unspoken obsession. The source material we're looking at today just throws you right in the deep end with this quote. It's designed to perfectly set up this wild contradiction the analysis explores. On one hand, this obsession with sexual performance, and on the other, this crippling fear of male weakness. And it's these two competing forces, the source argues, that are shaping things in ways most people don't even see. All right, so let's get right into the main argument here. The source we're analyzing claims that there's this massive underlying sexual obsession that touches literally every part of society. We're talking everywhere. But, and this is the crazy part, it's the one thing nobody's supposed to talk about. It's a huge taboo. And the analysis is pretty blunt about this. It says this public silence isn't about being modest, it's straight up hypocrisy. And it's a dangerous kind, because when you refuse to even acknowledge something exists, you create this perfect dark space for really serious problems, from personal anxiety to actual violence, to grow completely unchecked. Okay, so you might be thinking, is this a real, widespread problem, or is it just anecdotal? Well, the source material tackles that head on. It tries to paint the full picture by looking at everything from heart-wrenching personal stories to some pretty stark data. And to really show the human cost of all this, the analysis shares some truly difficult stories. It talks about this one case in Multan involving a 19-year-old wife whose screams during a horrific assault by her husband were so loud they alerted the neighbors. I mean, this shows it's not just some abstract idea. It has devastating real-world consequences. And look, to make it clear that this story from Multan isn't some isolated, tragic incident, the analysis brings in the numbers. It points to a UN report, and the finding is just sobering. 16% of Pakistani women report facing sexual violence from their partners. That's not a one-off, that's a pattern. And this right here really drives home that whole public versus private disconnect. The source brings up Google search data that shows Pakistan ranking number 1 globally for some incredibly explicit search terms. It's presented as this sort of undeniable digital footprint of what's really on people's minds, away from the public eye. So, okay, that's the what. But what about the why? Why does this situation even exist? The analysis doesn't just stop at the symptoms. It really digs deep into what it identifies as the root causes. And it's not just one thing, it's a whole tangled web of societal factors. A big one that the source points to right off the bat is paternalism. You know, the societal structure where men are just assumed to be superior. The argument is that this isn't just an abstract concept, it gets baked into the culture and creates this powerful sense of male entitlement, starting from a very, very young age. And it's not just theory, the analysis lays out some really stark, everyday examples. A boy is encouraged to get a foreign degree, while a girl, even a highly educated one, is told her ultimate place is in her in-laws' kitchen. This creates these two totally different realities, and the source argues that this system just breeds frustration and resentment on all sides. And here's where it gets really interesting. The analysis contrasts these cultural norms with what it says are the actual religious teachings. It points out that in Islam, marriage is defined as mithaqan ghaliza, which means a heavy contract. The implication is that it's a serious pact between two equals. The source's argument is that this fundamental idea of partnership and respect has been almost totally buried under layers of cultural traditions. But it's not just about paternalism. The analysis lists a whole bunch of other contributing factors. Think about it. Marriage becomes so difficult and expensive that people have to put it off. You've got widespread pornography, creating totally unrealistic expectations, and even something as basic as a lack of personal space in crowded homes. You mix all that together and you've basically created a pressure cooker. Okay, so we've talked about the social cost, but what about the economic cost? This next part of the analysis is fascinating because it connects the dots between this societal issue and real economic damage. And then it asks a really sharp question. Who's actually making money off of all this dysfunction? First up, the economic hit. The argument is simple. When half your population doesn't feel safe, it's going to hurt your economy. The analysis points out that the number of women in the workforce in Pakistan is way lower than in neighboring countries like India and Bangladesh. And it draws a direct line from an unsafe environment to that economic reality.
And this brings us to another one of those head-scratching paradoxes. You've got all this evidence of a hyper-sexualized undercurrent in society. But then you walk down the street or go online, and you're bombarded with ads for Mardana Kamzori, cures for male weakness. It's this wild mix of obsession and deep-seated anxiety. Which, of course, leads to the big question the analysis asks. With all this confusion and fear floating around, who's cashing in, right? Someone has to be benefiting from this. And the answer is a whole industry. A huge, mostly unregulated industry that profits directly from these insecurities. We're talking about everyone from quacks on the street corner to big pharma companies. Social media influencers, too. The source even mentions that some TV anchors are basically running a side hustle selling these herbal remedies. Okay, so after laying out a pretty heavy picture of the problem, you've got to wonder, is there any way out? Does the analysis offer any hope? And the answer is yes. It does shift gears to talk about what a path forward might actually look like. So, what's the solution? Well, the source is really clear that there's no quick fix. It's got to be a multi-step approach. Step 1, make marriage simpler and easier to access, providing a healthy outlet. Step 2, real, meaningful sexual health education. That's about more than just biology. It's about respect. Step 3, better parenting, giving kids space and privacy. And maybe the biggest one, Step 4, a complete change in how we view marriage, moving from a service model to a partnership of equals. And to really drive home that point about parenting, the source brings up this powerful Arabic saying. The idea is simple but profound. You have to teach your kids for their time, not for yours. You have to recognize that they're growing up in a world with challenges you never faced, and your guidance has to reflect that. But at the end of the day, the analysis concludes that this isn't something that can be fixed with a new law or policy. Real change has to start from the inside out. It has to start with a shift in how people think. And that shift only happens when people are brave enough to ask the hard questions about themselves and about their society. And so, the analysis leaves us with one final, very pointed question to think about. It's a powerful gut check, really, because if you aren't the one to teach your children about this stuff, who will be? The internet? Strangers? The very sources that are part of the problem? The choice isn't if they'll learn. The only choice you have is who they'll learn from.